Hey everyone, and welcome back to another news alert. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and thank you so much for tuning into Boyd News. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more updates like this. And feel free to support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee. Links are in the description below the video. All right, so real quick, before we jump into the news between Russia and Ukraine, just want to give you guys a quick update and let you know that this week I will be leaving out of town on a planned trip. I'll be leaving on November 6th, starting on Thursday, and I will be returning somewhere around Wednesday or Thursday of next week. That'll be either November 12th or the 13th, okay? Just want to let you guys know about that before we start to approach Wednesday. I will be here up until then, but starting on Thursday, I will be going out of town, okay, guys? So I'll put out some community posts and some updates to let you know on that. Let's go ahead and jump into the news. Thanks for your patience. Lots of information coming out from this war overnight. Ukraine launching a pretty large drone attack onto Russia, and we have reports of the Saratov oil refinery that has been struck by Ukrainian drones. Let's jump into this first report here on your screen. It says Ukraine's general staff confirms strikes on Russia's Saratov refinery. The Rosneft refinery is one of Russia's oldest and has a production capacity of 4.8 million metric tons per year. Last night's attack was the fourth time the refinery has been targeted this autumn. So once again, the Saratov oil refinery being attacked. I don't know how many times we've reported this already, but we do know that the Saratov oil refinery has been shut down numerous times in the recent past and come under attack so many times. Lots of major oil processing units being struck on this facility. This is located somewhat close to Moscow, a little bit southeast of Moscow, probably about 600 kilometers away from Ukraine. We'll talk more about this story here in just a minute. Also, in other top headline news, Ukraine's Special Operation Forces blew up Russian logistics in the occupied Luhansk Oblast in Ukraine with drones. A fuel and lubricant unloading site and a logistics warehouse used by Russian forces were both hit. Also, an oil depot in the Russian-occupied city of Shakhtarsk in the Donetsk region of Ukraine came under a pretty large drone attack as well, and it took a direct hit from a Ukrainian drone. And on top of that, lots of other big news and destruction to more Russian military equipment in Crimea, along with Russia's port of Tuapse coming under heavy drone attack from Ukraine back on Saturday night, going into early Sunday morning yesterday. We'll talk about those attacks over Saturday night, just due to the fact that normally I'm not here on Sunday. As many of you know, I usually take Sundays off each week. So yeah, we had a pretty large drone attack onto the port of Tuapse down in the Krasnodar Krai over Saturday night going into Sunday. And this is right next to the port of Novorossiysk, where Russia exports a lot of oil. So lots of news to talk about. Clearly, let's go ahead and jump into this. We're going to hop on over here to X with Max25. It says UAVs attack, map from drone bomber. So here's the map from Drone Bomber on Telegram, showing the trajectory of drones going into Russia. We can see a pretty large attack towards the eastern side of Ukraine. And over here in Saratov region, this is going to be right here in the center where a lot of these drones are crossing through in the city of Saratov, where that oil refinery is located. Took at least, I'd say, 2 hits, because we have video footage of a fire already, and then it got hit again by Ukrainian drones. We'll talk about that starting out the video. Also moving over here to eastern side of Ukraine, Luhansk region, that's where we have reports of Russian logistics being blown up over here. And then also an oil depot that's in occupied territory used by the Russians in the Donetsk region came under attack. Down here in Crimea, over the last 48 hours, we have reports of multiple radar stations and equipment that's connected to Russia's S-400 air defense systems that were attacked. Numerous radars being destroyed down here over the last 48 hours. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Krasnodar Krai down here, where the port of Tuapse came under attack from Saturday night going into Sunday morning. So lots of reports to talk about. Let's go ahead and keep moving here. Kirilo Shevchenko breaking. Ukraine's drones slammed Russia's Saratov oil refinery again. Flames are up near the ABT-6 unit, primary oil processing heart, hitting one of Putin's oldest cash cows, 7 million tons, a year of capacity. Multiple strikes confirmed, partial shutdowns looming. Approximate losses, 50,000 plus tons refined oil disrupted monthly, and $30 million plus in damages and fuel chaos. Yes, we know this oil refinery has been attacked so many times. You can see it took a direct hit right here in the center on one of these smokestacks. And then also over here to the right, there's a huge fire that broke out over here. And allegedly, according to the information, some people were able to actually geolocate where this strike took place. And apparently, there is a major oil processing unit known as the AVT 6 oil processing unit that could have been taken a huge hit. But there's definitely a fire that broke out right next to it. Have not been able to confirm whether that oil processing unit has been destroyed, but very likely considering we're seeing a major fire right there. We'll wait for more details. But that was just some video coming out from the Saratov oil refinery overnight showing at least 2 direct hits, one on that AVT 6 processing unit and then one on the smokestack here in the middle. Now, Max 25, Special Operation Forces blew up enemy logistics in Luhansk near Dovzhansk, if I'm saying that right, sorry guys. A fuel and lubricant unloading site was hit, and near Rozkishny. One of the Special Operation Forces units destroyed a logistics warehouse of the occupation forces. So, 2 logistical sites being attacked here in the occupied Luhansk region of Ukraine. This one looks like a train that came under attack right here. This is actually a rail car full of what looks like fuel train cars, okay? And that came under attack and was struck there in that video. We've seen Ukraine doing a lot of that. And then this drone also striking some sort of warehouse that was allegedly being used by the Russian forces over here in the Luhansk region. You can see this drone flying in, slamming into the top of that building. And then right here, we've got a second drone that's kind of flying over the area, going for another target. And you can see the building right there on fire, just in case you missed it. There it is again, the very center of this warehouse completely on fire after being hit by that previous drone. So huge hits here by Ukraine overnight. Now, Vicegrad 24, Ukrainian suicide drone, just smashed into a Russian oil depot in Russian-occupied Shakhtarsk in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. So this is that oil depot in southeastern Ukraine in the Donetsk region, taking a direct hit from a Ukrainian drone. Take a look at this, 10 seconds. All right, so no fire being recorded or destruction to this oil depot, but for sure this drone looks like it may have slammed into it. It's really hard to tell where this drone had actually impacted, but lots of reports indicating this was an oil depot that came under attack here, and somebody was actually very close by when they recorded this oil depot allegedly coming under attack. Pretty crazy video there. Now, Max 25, on the night of November 1st to the 2nd, 2025, GUR attacked another expensive object of the Muscovites' air defense system in the temporarily occupied Crimea. As a result of the strike on the enemy control point of the S-400 Triumph anti-aircraft missile division, multifunctional radar 92N6E and equipment of the autonomous power supply system of the S-400 control point were destroyed. GUR specialists also successfully hit the airfield surveillance radar AOR L-1AS and the P-18 Terek radar of the Russian occupation army. So once again, Ukraine targeting multiple air defense systems and radars down here again. I believe this should be some sort of radar. I think it could be for the S-400 air defense system coming under attack right here. Lots of different targets being struck in this video. There's another system. I'm not sure if that's connected to the S-400 also, or it could be some sort of radar, because again, it's talking about 2 different types of equipment here. Something else is already burning there. That might be a radar, and then one of the vehicles attached to that were being attacked. Here's another one, looks like a radar system right here being directly struck by Ukraine. And again, these strikes were taking place over Saturday night into Sunday, apparently. Here's another radar taking a direct hit right there as well. So we've been seeing a lot of that down here inside of Crimea, down in southern Ukraine, occupied territory held by the Russians. Lots of radar stations being slammed by these drones, and Ukraine continues to do this. So crazy news there. Now, no reports. Last night, a Ukrainian drone attack hit the Russian port of Tuapse. 12 drones struck, destroying the small vessel Nord and setting 4 tankers ablaze, including Panama-flagged Pollux with 40,000 tons of fuel and Liberia's Chai with 56,000 tons. Port infrastructure was also damaged. So, yeah, apparently multiple oil tankers were stationed at the port of Tuapse down in the Krasnodar Krai region of Russia at the time of this drone attack that took place again over Saturday night going into Sunday, and I was not here again for you guys to report that yesterday, so I want to briefly go over this. Lots of infrastructure being attacked here. Here's a video now, Military News UA. According to Dossier Spiona, The seaport of Tuapse was attacked by 12 long-range kamikaze drones. As a result of the attack, the small vessel Nord was destroyed. Fire on tanker Chai, fire on tanker Pollux, fire on tanker Coastbuster, and fire on tanker Saturn. Damage to pier equipment and fuel transport pipelines. Look at that huge attack, guys. So we had a small vessel being attacked called the Nord, and then 4 oil tankers allegedly catching on fire being struck by drones, and damage to pier equipment and fuel transport pipeline. I want you guys to see this video. It's about 1 minute long. Lots of crazy gunfire from Russian defense forces over here at the port of Tuapse. Huge explosions at that port. You can see a fire over here also that broke out, some drones slamming into some of the oil tankers and that port over there. Take a look at this video. Pretty insane.
Вот он. Сейчас вот здесь где-то. И не стрелять, прям. Сейчас где-то на сторону порта пизданется. Вон он сейчас пролетел.
Ну да, звук слышно.
Куда пошел? Вот догонку стреляет. Вон он взорвался, вон он взорвался. Вон он, видишь еще один?
Да.
All right, so some pretty wild footage coming out from the port of Tuapse. And for those of you that might be wondering, why is Ukraine targeting this port? Well, the Tuapse port and also the port of Novorossiysk down here in the Krasnodar Krai region of Russia is primarily used for the export of oil products, okay? And we know that Ukraine is going after Russia's oil and gas industry right now, trying to destroy it, to force an end to this war, because this is majority of how Russia is able to make money in their country, right? With all these oil exports and the production of oil and gas. So if a lot of these exports are halted, Russia's going to lose money, which will force them to end this war if they don't have the funds to continue fighting inside of Ukraine. So that's exactly why they're going after that port. Now, Vicegrad 24, Chinese refineries have boycotted nearly half of all Russian oil shipments following U.S. sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil. According to Bloomberg, state-run giant Sinopec and PetroChina have already canceled several purchases of Russian crude and continue to hold off on new deals. They have been joined by smaller private refineries that fear secondary sanctions, like Shandong Yulong Petrochemical, which was recently blacklisted by the UK and the EU. The buyer's strike has affected roughly 45% of Russia's oil exports to China, according to Rystad Energy. The Far Eastern ESPO crude blend has been hit particularly hard, with prices now offered at looks like 50 cents per barrel discount to Brent compared to $1 premium just a month ago. Okay, so we're hearing more reports coming out, according to Bloomberg, that apparently Chinese refineries are halting the purchases of Russian oil even further. We've been hearing a lot of reports like this coming out over the last week, but I'm very skeptical about this, because we heard some other reports that apparently some Chinese tankers are meeting up with Russian oil tankers sitting out in different parts of the world and transferring oil from Russian tankers over to Chinese tankers, which could potentially allow them to evade sanctions. There's been a lot of reports about that recently. So you'll have to see how much is going to affect Russia, but it's sounding bad on the surface here, okay? If Russia's being affected this badly, and it says the buyer's strike has affected roughly 45% of Russia's oil exports to China. That is a large amount, guys. This could be potentially tens of billions of dollars in losses for Russia. And we know that China is one of the major importers of Russian oil. So we'll have to wait for more details, but it's not looking good right now. Now, military news UA. Russian oil exports fell by 500,000 barrels per day in September, according to Reuters. According to the publication's estimates, Russians are currently exporting only about 2 million barrels per day, down from 2.5 million to the lowest level since COVID-19. Meanwhile, the world's largest oil companies, Shell, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Total Energies, and British Petroleum, are reporting significant profit increases due to reduced competition from Russia. So this is another big sign that countries are pulling away from purchasing Russian oil, and also their oil exports are falling through the floor right now. We've been seeing these reports coming out since last week due to a lot of these strikes on oil refineries and just the sanctions as well. That's really hurting them. I think we're going to have to wait probably another month or two before we really start to see these sanctions come into effect and really hurt Russia big time. But we'll have to see. Right now, according to this information, though, their oil exports are dropping down to 2 million barrels per day. Okay, and that's the lowest level since the health crisis back in 2020. So that's crazy news. And that's during a time where pretty much the world was shut down, right, or partially operating, and they're going back to those low levels. So that's crazy. Now, Ukrainian review. Russia's hit Dnipro with missiles. Damaged Enterprise. A fire broke out. It was extinguished. 37-year-old man was injured. The Russian army used artillery and FPV drones in Nikopol. In total, 4 people were injured in the city yesterday. Yeah, pretty large drone and missile attack onto Ukraine overnight. Roughly about 140 or so drones going into Ukraine. We can see fires and destruction here, especially inside the city of Dnipro being hit by missiles. I think somewhere around 12 different types of missiles were fired onto Ukraine. Obviously, some of them striking Dnipro here. We can see the firefighters on site of multiple buildings that were struck from drones and missiles. Major destruction inside of Ukraine reported overnight. Very sad news there. Now, Max 25, an unidentified drone disrupted operations at Bremen Airport in Germany for almost an hour, according to DPA. So here we go again, more reports of these drones that are flying over airports and sensitive military sites across Europe, this time being in Germany overnight at the Bremen Airport. And we had operations being disrupted there at that airport and flights being diverted once again. We've been seeing a lot of that inside of Germany. Here's another one, Ukrainian review. Unknown drones spotted in Belgium were spying on F-16s and ammunition, according to RBC Ukraine. Belgian defense minister has hinted that he sees no other culprits for violating Belgian airspace other than Russia. Okay, so I believe this could be tied to a report that came out last week. I think it was somewhere around maybe Friday, Saturday. We had some information that Belgium was seeing some drones over their airspace as well. So apparently, according to RBC Ukraine, which is a mainstream news outlet in Ukraine, they're reporting that these drones were spying on F-16s and ammunition sites inside of Belgium. So interesting information there. Again, you can see here, these drones are spying on sensitive military sites and airports. Why are they doing that? And what is this in preparation for? It could be for something in the future. Here's one more. War Translated. Reuters reports that reconnaissance drones were spotted over a Belgian airbase housing nuclear bombs. Belgium's defense minister suggests that the drones may have been launched by the Russians. And it says here from Reuters, Belgium investigating new drone sightings over military base. Okay, so yeah, apparently this military base not only had F-16s and ammunition, but also housing nuclear weapons. So that would obviously be something that maybe Russia would keep an eye on, right? So is this Russia doing this? We still have not had official confirmation. The only thing we've really heard is one drone being shot down over Estonia so far. There was one flying over some military barracks over there in the last few weeks, and apparently it was taken down by Estonian Defense Forces. They used some sort of anti-drone weapon to disable it, and it came crashing down, but they apparently never found it. So these drone sightings are continuing over military bases and airports inside of Europe. Now Lavrov, now from next, it says Lavrov falls out of favor. The Kremlin is looking for someone to blame after the collapse of the planned Putin-Trump talks in Budapest. According to Russian insiders, responsibility has been pinned on the foreign ministry. Its memo, filled with unrealistic, almost ultimatum-like demands, reportedly angered Trump and led to the meeting's cancellation. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has become the main scapegoat. Western media has already named him a key reason for the cooling of U.S.-Russia relations. Ironically, Lavrov tried to impress Putin by taking a hard line with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but overplayed his hand. He came unprepared, refused to discuss compromise, and rigidly repeated the Kremlin's instructions on Ukraine. Washington took the tone as confrontational and shut the door. The Trump administration made it clear they won't negotiate under threats. Now leaks to Kommersant, which is going to be a Russian news outlet. Says Russia's foreign ministry is trying to deflect blame, claiming Lavrov only followed prior agreements reached in Alaska, but sources say Putin was furious. Lavrov narrowly avoided being accused of sabotage for derailing a critical summit. Kremlin emissary Kirill Dmitriev has since flown to Washington to calm tensions. Lavrov's position is now visibly weakened, like Shoigu before him. He's turning from a power player into a scapegoat, adding insult to injury. A harsh piece in the Financial Times reportedly hits the Russian foreign minister where it hurts the most. So apparently, the Kremlin is looking for somebody to blame for the failed peace talks between the U.S. And also Russia. Right? We were hearing that apparently Vladimir Putin and Trump were supposed to be meeting in Budapest, Hungary recently, and that got canceled due to a phone call between Sergei Lavrov, right here, the foreign minister out of Russia, and also the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, where allegedly he told Rubio that Russia was not going to bend on their demands, and all these demands basically mean that the war is not going to come to an end in Ukraine because Ukraine will not agree to a lot of Russia's demands. We've talked a lot about that. I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, apparently now the Kremlin's looking for someone to blame, and they might be blaming Lavrov here. So I wonder if we're going to see some action inside of the Kremlin, and we might be seeing him getting removed or something like that. We'll have to see what's going to happen. But apparently he could be the blame for the failed peace talks. Now, Noel reports Putin has reportedly ordered the full capture of Donetsk region by the end of February. According to RBC Ukraine regarding Pokrovsk, up to 1,000 Russian troops are in the city where the railway splits the zone of control. The south is already marked as a gray zone or under Russian control. No encirclement yet, but Russian forces are pushing into central, western, and northern areas with close quarters fighting. Okay, so RBC Ukraine reporting that apparently Vladimir Putin has ordered the full control of the and capture of the Donetsk region by the end of February. It was supposed to be done by the end of the year. We heard some reports about that, but now Putin is extending that, and he wants full capture of the Donetsk region by the end of February. So the next, 3 months or so, 4 months. So we'll see. We'll have to see how things go over there. But we have been hearing that near the city of Pokrovsk, here in the Donetsk region, major transport and rail hub city, it is currently starting to collapse right now. But Ukraine has taken some defensive maneuvers and deployed special operation forces over there to force the Russians out of that city. They are breaking in right now, and it's a very big possibility it could be falling here in the next few weeks. We'll have to see what's going to happen, and also reports that if that city falls, the entire Donetsk region could start to collapse much further. That have been some reports coming out over the past few months, but we'll have to see how things go over here inside of eastern Ukraine. Now, Bliskovka, the occupiers are seeking to capture Kupyansk in order to gain access to Kupyansk Vuzlovy, if I'm saying that right. That's another city that's just south of Kupyansk in the Kharkiv region, says Valery Kisilov, a communication officer for the 116th Motorized Rifle Brigade. The city is a major logistics hub that will greatly simplify logistics for the Russians and help them develop their offensive actions in other directions. So not only is the Donetsk region with the city of Pokrovsk, a major city that Ukraine needs to hold on to, but also Kupyansk. Kupyansk is going to be a major city similar to Pokrovsk, but up in the Kharkiv region, up in northeastern Ukraine. We've been hearing the Russians are pushing into that city also. So things are not looking good. Two major cities at risk of collapsing in the eastern side of Ukraine that could force a quicker end and a full control of the Russians taking over the Kharkiv and Donetsk regions inside of Ukraine. So hopefully that won't be the case. Let's see if Ukraine can hold out in those areas. Now next, the UK has delivered a new batch of Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine for long-range strikes against Russia. The exact number of missiles has not been disclosed. According to Bloomberg sources, the delivery was made in advance to ensure Ukraine is properly supplied for the winter. London is confident the Kremlin will intensify attacks on Ukrainian civilian infrastructure in the coming months. So great news to hear today. Apparently some of these British Storm Shadow missiles have been delivered to Ukraine, or at least another batch has been, but we're not sure how many. We know Ukraine uses a lot of these to strike targets on Russia, especially in occupied territories of Ukraine, also in Crimea. So it looks like a few of these have been sent over to Ukraine, maybe a few dozen. We'll have to see if we get more information on that later. Now from Tendar, Germany successfully delivered 2 more firing units of MIM-104 Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky publicly thanked German Chancellor Merz for this important delivery. So I think this information originally came out on Saturday. This would have been somewhere around November 1st, going into the 2nd of November. Also, it's on Sunday, yesterday. This reports that apparently Germany had sent over some Patriot air defense systems over to Ukraine. We have been hearing reports that Germany will be supplying more of these in the future, and allegedly 2 of these Patriot batteries were sent to Ukraine, significantly boosting Ukraine's capabilities to shoot down incoming Russian missiles. So great to hear about that Ukraine received 2 more of those. Now, Maria Drutska, another sign of decreasing Russian international influence. Serbia now openly says they will sell ammo to EU countries for use in Ukraine, that they produce more ammo than France and are willing to sell all of it. Seems they no longer care what Russia thinks about that. Look at this report here. Serbia ready to sell ammunition to EU even if it reaches Ukraine, Vucic says. So we know that Serbia is like pretty pro-Russian, right? And the fact that they're coming out saying they're ready to sell a lot of ammunition out of their nation directly to the EU, that eventually could go to Ukraine, right? Very interesting that they're willing to do that. I noticed down here, look at what it says here. When asked whether the buyers could use the ammunition in Ukraine, Serbian president replied, they can do whatever they want with it. According to him, Serbia seeks long-term contracts with European partners and already maintains military cooperation with countries in Africa and Asia. So basically openly stating that, yeah, we'll supply these over to Ukraine if anybody in Europe wants to buy them, which I'm sure there's nations that will, right? And he claims that they're producing more ammunition than France is. So Serbia going to be making some big money here very soon in supplying this ammunition over to Ukraine. And on top of that, wonder if he's doing this to try to get on the good side of Trump as well. Let me know what you think about that. Now, Ziz Maxim, Belgium's refusal to back a multi-billion euro EU loan to Ukraine could prompt the International Monetary Fund to block financial support for Kiev, resulting in a cascading loss of confidence in the war-torn country's economic viability, according to Politico. European supporters of the controversial 140 billion euro reparations loan backed by frozen Russian state assets in the EU argue the IMF's continued support for Ukraine is crucial, and fear time is running out to convince the institution to grant new loans to Kiev. One European Commission official and diplomats from 3 member countries said that securing such an agreement would convince the IMF that Ukraine is financially viable for the coming years, a requirement for the Washington-based institution to bankroll any country. Here's a report from Politico. IMF support for Ukraine hinges on Russian assets loan, EU warns. Brussels fears the IMF could cancel aid unless Belgium agrees to back a 140 billion euro loan, reparations loan, that is, to Ukraine. So we've been talking about this reparations loan. Basically, what the EU is trying to do is tap into frozen Russian assets that amounts to about 300 billion euros, and they want to access about half of that and send it directly over to Ukraine. And how it will get repaid is when Russia pays reparations to Ukraine in the future, that money given to Ukraine will repay back that loan. But now apparently we know that Belgium is not very happy with supplying this over to Ukraine. They have not agreed to do so. So they're kind of blocking this reparations loan over to Ukraine. And apparently now support from the International Monetary Fund rests on this, pretty much this deal of this reparations loan. So hopefully that's not going to happen. The IMF does back Ukraine a lot monetarily, and that could definitely hurt them at moving down the road in terms of financing for their country. So it looks like both of these are tied together. Hopefully the EU can figure out some way to get this loan over to Ukraine. Now, Visioner. Donald Trump stated that Ukraine and Russia will have to fight it out anyway. When asked by a journalist what would be the last straw proving that Putin doesn't want to end the war against Ukraine, Trump replied, "There is no last straw. Sometimes you have to let a conflict run its course. They're fighting, and they're fighting each other. Putin has lost a lot of soldiers, maybe even over 1 million. That's a lot. It's tough for Ukraine too. For both sides, really. Sometimes you just have to let things play out and come to an end," said the U.S. president. So is this Trump basically stating that they're just not going to be putting much of an effort to try to end this war? I mean, we haven't seen much out of the Trump administration, especially after we're not seeing this meeting between Trump and Putin anymore in Budapest, right? So it looks like the Trump administration is taking a back seat in this conflict for right now and saying, you know what, there's not much we can do. We've seen Trump actually say that numerous times to reporters recently. That there's not a whole lot that they can do. So it looks like Trump's just kind of waiting this out to see what's going to happen here. Who's going to win this war, and how is this going to continue? Is Russia going to win it? Is Ukraine going to win it? We don't really know what's going to happen, right? But it looks like Trump not taking a whole lot of action for right now, especially with these kind of statements. Now, Savchenko Volodymyr, Trump said Putin really wants to do business with the U.S. He wants to make a lot of money for Russia. I think we'll get that war done in a couple months. Trump on nuclear testing. Russia's testing, China's testing. They just don't talk about it. We have to test nuclear weapons. Otherwise, you don't really know if they work. Yeah, there's a new report coming out on that today. The U.S. is going to be testing some nuclear weapons. I'll do a separate video on that if I have some time for you guys today. But yeah, Trump also stating that he wants to do business with Putin and he wants this war done with in the next couple of months. Apparently, that's a plan that they have. So, not sure how they're going to end this war. How is it going to come to an end? What are the steps to move forward with that? But apparently, the Trump administration is trying to end this war in the next couple of months. But we've heard this before. We've heard 2 weeks. We heard start of the Trump administration. The war was going to come to an end a year later after Trump's in office, nearly, and the war is still going. So yeah, major statements here by Trump, but apparently the U.S. still wants to do business with them after everything that's going on right now. Isn't that interesting? Now, Bliskovka, Trump told CBS News that he currently does not plan to transfer Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. When asked by journalists in Washington whether his administration would provide these missiles to Kiev, the U.S. president replied, "No, at least not for now." He added, "However, we may change our decision." In his interview with CBS News, Trump also suggested that the war in Ukraine could be ended within a few months, which we just heard about. Okay, so talking about these Tomahawk missiles. So Trump pretty much told reporters aboard Air Force One in the last 24 hours that he's not planning to send these missiles over to Ukraine, but he says he may change his decision in the future. So maybe that's when it comes to the point where they're like, hey, we'll try to see if this can work out diplomatically over the next couple of months. If not, and things escalate, maybe that's when the U.S. will send these over to Ukraine. Still waiting for that decision, but we did have a report last week that the Pentagon apparently has approved these transfers of these missiles for Ukraine, the Tomahawks, and we're just waiting on Trump's decision whether to send them over. Now, NOAA reports overnight Russia launched an aerial attack, 3 Kinzhal missiles, 4 Iskander-Ms, 5 S-300/S-400s, and 138 drones, around 80 of them Shaheeds. Ukraine's air defense shot down or jammed 116 targets, including 1 Kinzhal and 115 drones. Missile and drone strikes hit 11 locations. So 11 locations in Ukraine being slammed by these drones and missiles, and 116 out of 150 targets were taken down. Looks like they took down actually 1 Kinzhal missile, which is good to see. Those are hypersonics as far as I know. But the rest of them were not shot down. These missiles were slamming into targets inside of Ukraine, especially the city of Dnipro, as we had those destruction to buildings over there in central Ukraine. Overall, though, pretty good numbers in destruction to Russian drones and missiles. Now, Kyiv Independent. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of November 3rd, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And our final update. Russia's losses as of November 3rd, 1,160 troops, 6 AFVs, 121 vehicles and fuel tanks, 5 tanks, 25 artillery systems, 383 UAVs, 1 cruise missile, and 2 special equipment. Okay, so over here, 2 special equipment being destroyed. Looks like a cruise missile that was fired onto Ukraine Saturday night going into Sunday was taken down. 25 artillery systems. About average numbers here, I'd say. Tanks and AFV numbers still about the same. Also, same with vehicles and fuel tanks. And then troop numbers climbing back up again. They were dropping back down to about 800-900 towards the end of late last week, and now starting to come back up closer to 1,200 troops. In this case, 1,160. So, guys, I want to thank you very much for being here for today's update on November 3rd, 2025. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful day out there and enjoy your week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think about all these details down below in the comment section. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.